Why doesn't Turkey help Gaza? On the surface, the answer looks simple. Turkey talks loudly about Palestinian suffering, its leaders give passionate speeches, and Ankara pledges humanitarian gestures. But when you look closer, you find a tangle of practical limits, economic ties, regional calculations, and international constraints that explain why Turkey's help has not been the decisive game changer many expect. Turkey's President Erdogan and other Turkish officials have been among the most vocal critics of Israel's campaign in Gaza, with condemning strikes, promising support for Palestinians, and repeatedly placing the humanitarian crisis at the center of Ankara's foreign policy narrative. Yet strong rhetoric doesn't automatically translate into sustained large-scale ground operations inside Gaza. Turkey's ability to act is bounded by logistics, Israel's control of maritime and land access to Gaza, and the obvious risk of military escalation if Ankara attempted direct interventions. The war's military reality, including Israel's naval and air superiority around Gaza, makes any Turkish attempt at unilateral material or military intervention highly risky. When states say they will help Gaza, that can mean many things such as diplomatic pressure, money to UN agencies, aid shipped through third parties, or direct aid convoys and flotillas. Turkey has attempted some of these routes, from pledging aid convoys to working with NGOs. But most aid that actually enters Gaza must either be cleared by Israel or move through Egypt's Rafah crossing. Israel's control over most access points means that Ankara's capacity to get large quantities of material relief directly into Gaza is constrained unless Israel or Egypt approves the transit. On the ground, international agencies have warned of a looming famine and pushed for far more relief, a problem that no single middle power can solve alone. Turkey and Israel remain significant trading partners despite political tensions. Official international trade data show that Turkey exported over $1 billion worth of goods to Israel in 2024, making Ankara one of Israel's notable suppliers. In practice, this economic interdependence creates friction. Strong anti-Israel rhetoric at the political level coexists with private and public sector incentives to keep trade and commercial channels open. According to the Turkish government, simply cutting off all economic ties overnight would damage Turkish exporters and domestic industries that rely on bilateral commerce. That economic reality limits how far Ankara will go if helping Gaza meant a full economic rupture. Some recent investigative reporting has highlighted continued flows of oil and oil products involving Turkish ports and traders linked with shipments to Israel. Even when governments declare informal or formal restrictions, trade networks and private actors can find ways to continue flows via rerouting and intermediaries. Most of the oil reaching Israel passes through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, which carries Azerbaijani crude to Turkey's Mediterranean port of Ceyhan. From there, the oil is loaded onto tankers and shipped across the Mediterranean to Israeli ports, primarily Ashkelon and Ashdod. That makes policy enforcement difficult because declaring a boycott or embargo is one thing. Ensuring every tanker, broker, and trading desk complies is another. These commercial realities blunt the immediate impact of political sanctions and make Ankara's public threats less sudden in effect than they appear. Yes, Ankara's Middle East policy has multiple strands. Turkey wants to be seen as a defender of Palestinian rights to bolster its domestic political base and leadership claims in the Sunni Muslim world. At the same time, Ankara is balancing relationships with other regional players and managing competition with Russia and Europe over influence in Syria, Libya, and the Eastern Mediterranean. According to the government, this multi-vector strategy requires caution. Aggressive moves that might look good domestically, such as a direct confrontation over Gaza, could produce serious diplomatic blowback from partners and create new security headaches on Turkey's borders. Simply put, Ankara is juggling reputation politics, domestic politics, and regional stability risks. Erdogan's electoral coalition and political narrative frequently use strong pro-Palestinian language, which is an effective way to mobilize conservative and nationalist constituencies. But domestic politics also pressures Erdogan to protect the Turkish economy, curb inflation, and avoid shocks that might cost votes. If a dramatic economic break with Israel or an escalation that risks foreign investment were to accelerate economic pain at home, the political calculus would shift. So while moral posturing helps domestically, it is tempered by the realities of economic management and voter sensitivity to living costs. This dual pressure explains why Turkey's public outrage does not always become immediate, high-cost action. International law, alliances, and multilateral channels matter in this problem. Many in Turkey prefer legal and diplomatic routes like pushing at the International Court, spearheading UN statements, or coordinating with like-minded states. These channels are slower and often produce modest results, but they maintain Turkey's international legitimacy and avoid direct confrontation. When direct action risks military clash, Ankara leans on multilateralism even if critics charge it is insufficient or performative. Some statecraft happens beneath the headlines, including back-channel mediation, intelligence cooperation, or quietly supporting diaspora groups and charities. Evaluating help issue only by visible aid convoys misses these subtler tools. At the same time, scrutiny over any Turkish ties to Palestinian groups and the potential international consequences limits how overt Ankara can be when it provides non-humanitarian support. Turkey has at times announced symbolic bans or suspensions of trade, flight corridors, or diplomatic ties. But ironically, trade statistics and investigative reporting show that economic and commercial ties can persist through intermediaries, rerouting, and private actors, weakening the immediate bite of official measures. That duality fuels accusations of hypocrisy. Critics point to the gap between fiery speeches and the continued flow of goods and commercial ties. Erdogan's government has to weigh whether to inflict self-harm on the Turkish economy in order to make a maximal symbolic statement, and often the answer is no. Finally, what help or support might look like going forward. Real, scalable relief will need three things: secure, sustained humanitarian access agreed with whoever controls the crossings, a coordinated international logistics and funding effort, and political pressure to protect civilians and open corridors consistently. Turkey can be an important part of that as a funder, regional mobilizer, or logistics hub, but only within the practical constraints described: Israel's control of access, Egypt's role at Rafah, Turkey's economic self-interest, and regional diplomacy. Turkey's loud moral support for Gaza reflects both genuine political positioning and an attempt to preserve regional influence. But helping Gaza in a way that dramatically changes outcomes would require Turkey to accept high economic pain, risk military escalation, or secure third-party cooperation. That mismatch between moral rhetoric and geopolitical, economic, and logistical constraints is why Turkey often looks like it both supports Gaza and yet cannot or will not deliver the kind of help many expect.